Greetings, good people, and a very warm welcome to you all. So this Rolly was purchased by someone in non-working condition, and wants it restored and working again so he can enjoy it for a while, and then at some point he wants to flip it for a tidy little profit. Fair play, nothing wrong with that. But the watch has someone else's history on the caseback in the form of an engraving, and the new owner wants this engraving removed because he is aware that when he sells it on, his profit will be substantially less. In most cases, a watch with a personal engraving does tend to devalue the watch, unless it belonged to Paul Newman or Stevie McQueen, if you know what I mean. The watch is a 9-carat gold piece with a Denison case made in my hometown. The engraving is pretty deep, so I'll have to figure out a way to do this without losing too much gold. This piece is from the 1950s with a manual wind movement, which has a Breguet overcoil hairspring, which is damaged. So that will need sorting because a replacement would be almost impossible to find or cost a kidney. So let's crack on. So if you guys remember JLC reversal video where I did some laser welding, maybe we can get some 9-carat gold and then melt it with the laser into these engravings and then polish it up again. So that's something to consider. Or the alternative is to just polish it all. In order to get rid of all that engraving, you'll have to polish away all the gold until you get to the bottom of the engraving. So I don't think the case pack is that thick, so we don't really want to lose that much gold, and it's something that I haven't done on the channel before, so it could be a good idea to do that. So we'll see what happens. Let's get it dismantled first and we'll take it from there. So this movement has a hairspring with a Breguet overcoil which has some issues, and before I do anything further I want to see if I can sort this hairspring out, or there's no point going any further. Someone has had a go at this previously and it's pretty messed up, hence why the balance wasn't swinging freely. Trying to do a hairspring and you're trying to climb on my back? What's the matter with you? So as you can see from here, the hairspring actually looks okay, but it's just that Breguet overcoil that looks a bit Breguet. So initially, without taking the spring off, I'm just going to fiddle around with it to see if I can get it to swing. Just trying to get an idea of where I need to be with the stud on the regulating pin. I just can't see from there, but that stud needs to be closer to the hole than it is. So after fiddling around with it for a while, I lost focus on the camera, but I reinstalled it and got it swinging, so let's check it out on the timer. But sadly, it sounds like the house and garage music I used to listen to back in the day. So now I've got that overcoil over the hairspring, but there seems to be some touching going on here. I think I need to lower this bit a little bit. Seems a bit weird. So now that the balance is swinging freely, it's time to get serious and fine-tune this thing. And the only way to do that is to remove this hairspring and to look at it from all angles. So first I'm going to lift up that overcoil so it doesn't touch the rest of the spring. You can just about see that it falls here. So we'll try and lift it up, and then we'll get the center and the stud and where it sits in the guide pins. We'll get it all lined up. Focus, man. Let's get in there. So now at least I'm getting a tick and a tuck. So now we need to fine tune it a little bit further, and there are various diagrams and methods you can use. If you don't want to faff around measuring it and then marking your holes, just put a bit of sticky paper onto my workbench. That's my staff position, and there's the 2 guide pins for the spring. That's the center. So that's where the staff goes, and that's where the stud goes, and that's where the guide pins are. So I need to push that out a little bit here. Can you guys see? So I need to push that hairspring out here so it sits in between those two guide pins, and then bring it around so my stud sits just there. So I'll fiddle around with that and get it all into position. A little bit more. It's a bit better. Seems to be swinging nicely. Let's check it out on the Timegrapher. And now look at this thing. Without even having serviced it, it's looking much better. So my collet, I probably didn't get it accurately enough. That's why the beat error is out so much. So I'll just twist that collet a little bit and see if we can get that beat error down. You can see, did you see that big piece of nasty? Keep an eye on that escape wheel. There you go. Did you see that big piece of nasty just went past? Looks like a little monkey. Goodbye. The only way I could entice him back was to put a computer here for him. Lovely. So now let's dismantle this thing. We'll start off by removing the stem. You want to become a PC gamer? We used to have the Neo Geo back in our day and the Atari. You never grace us with your presence anymore. One would think you've got a wife and kids. So how are your wife and kids? They're okay. Not bad for a 70-year-old dial. And we know this was presented in 1953. We can sort of date it to around then. It probably was produced a few years before then. So this is a case by Aaron Lufkin Dennison, who was born in Freeport, Maine, USA in 1812, and then later moved and became my neighbor in Birmingham in 1860 something. The company was still around till about 1967. You'll find a lot of watches made by Aaron Dennison for top brands because it was cheaper just to import the movements in and then have the cases made locally for tax reasons. So Dennison was like one of the go-to companies for high-end cases, usually in precious metals. It was a bit of a geezer, I bet. Wonder if you had a Brummie accent. Alright, mate. What do I tell ya? Do you want me to make a lovely case for your Rolly? And those indices are really flat, so I'm hoping they'll polish up quite nicely and that this whole dial will clean up as well. It's a beautiful, looks like an original dial. Doesn't look like it's been faffed around with or repainted. We'll have a closer look. So you can see how flat those indices are, and that will take a nice polish, I think. There's just some tarnishing over the years. There's a bit of paint loss from previous service interventions. You can see some scratches here and there. I don't think those are stains. That might just be a bit of paint loss just from moisture ingress and stuff over the years. But we'll give it a clean up and hopefully that will come up nice. Hey, come and have a look on the screen if my head gets in the way. My big head. Is my head in the way? No. Can you see this? Standard. Until the 2000. Let us now commence. Ooh, fried chicken. That looks like oil made from whale blubber. And start hunting them. We'll just remove this train bridge and we can do the barrel bridge after. So we can see some of the nasties lurking inside. I've seen worse. We all have, I guess. It's just years and years of old oil just gunking up. And even then, we managed to get it working. That's the subsidiary seconds. And that's the escape wheel. And even with a movement made by somebody else for Rolex, they always take it upon themselves to add some detailing, such as this beautiful perlage work on areas where you'd never see. I suppose they're only for the eyes of a watchmaker, but you get to see them today. And we just removed the mainspring barrel, and we have a washer here. Where did that come from? That's a dial washer, but I already have a dial washer from before. Now I've got another one here that's just come from beneath that barrel bridge. So I wonder if that was put there by accident, or if someone's used it as a shim. We'll have to wait and see if it works without it. Look at this cool little cap jewel, which looks like it's some type of shock device. So you can see the tip of that setting lever spring seems to be broken off. And this watch only has a manual wind and a setting function, so still work without it. Should engage with that setting lever there, that hook. That would be your hand setting position. Obviously the yoke is doing its job with the clutch, and then that's just your winding position. So doesn't really do much, that hook at the end of that setting lever spring, because it was working as well, but we'll replace it. Hipper with a hard. So there's all the parts. Not much there at all, to be honest. These jewels look a little bit on the gunky side. We'll do a little bit of pegging. Let's remove some of this to preserve the life of my solution. So I don't want to mess around with this dial too much because I don't think that's dirt or anything. It's just bruising to the surface. See those indices and how just tarnished over the years. I do want to give them a little polish. So I'll just give it a gentle wipe down and see if we can make it look a little bit better. So Bergeron always come up with these weird and wonderful impulse purchases to do the mundane of tasks which cost you a kidney, and they package it in a way that makes it look like it's some amazing technical piece of equipment. It's just a plastic pen with a bit of suede on it, and this will cost you over 50 quid with the various tips. And this you can use to lather your shaving foam before you shave, or you can use it to clean the dials. So this kit would cost you over 50 quid, but you know, that's a lot of money. So I'll show you some alternative ways you can do the same job with stuff you already have in your toolbox. So I've got my bit of pegwood and I've flattened it out. 1000 grit paper. I will do both sides, pointy side and a flat side. So you can see how close the indices are to the dial. So I'll be doing this with the eye loop, but just to show you guys how not to touch the dial. So make sure you stay on top of the indices at all time and make sure nothing's rubbing on the dial like so. I could just turn the whole thing over like this, but this is quite spongy. I don't want to risk it getting onto the dial. Very risky. I have decided to try the upside down method. So I've just put some of these dots on to give me some high spots so that it doesn't touch the dial. I haven't really pushed these down. They're just sitting there chilling. The highest points on that dial should be those indices. And I can't use this because you can see these two wings here which are higher than the dial. That's really flat and solid. So I'm going to put this paper on here. This paper a little clean. You gotta experiment with things every now and again. So I'll mark the 12 o'clock position, which is there, gently. Yeah. Get in there. Oh. Need to, the 8's covered up. Get in there. And I'm not pressing down on the dial. All I'm doing is just giving it that forward and backward motion. And I'm putting no pressure on the downward pressure on the dial whatsoever. And that is not looking bad. Better than before. And I think we'll call it a day there. Now let's get some fresh Radical, some nice clean Radical, and we'll just get rid of all that surface dust and bits of metal that we've just polished up, and then we can get a little bit of fluid on there. So you can see we haven't buggered up the dial yet, and those indices are looking quite nice. Even that Rolex crown is looking very nice. And always turn your Radical over so that whatever you've caught isn't dragging across the dial and scratching it up. No, I don't think any of that is embedded dirt. So I'll just gently try a little bit of fluid on there just to see. That is just bruising, I'm afraid, from years of use and service work probably. But that still looks lovely, that creamy silver dial. These non-lacquer dials are quite robust. Shiny, shiny, shiny. Runs correctly or not. I'll build the train first and then I'll come back to crown wheel and ratchet wheel just because I want to. Right. And that's the sub-seconds. And we'll go for this third wheel and then the second wheel. And the keyboard. Stop making funny noises, you mouth breather. So this is a caliber 700 manufactured by Egler, who made movements for Rolex up until 2004, when Rolex actually bought them out. So are all those Rolex watches with in-house movements actually in-house movements? I'll let you guys discuss that amongst yourselves in the comment section. The founder of Rolex, Hans Wilsdorf, tried his hand at producing many different brands, such as Rolco, Genex, Unicorn, amongst others, to see what brand name would stick. Hence why you will see familiar movements in those brands with a similar layout and bridge design. Most watch brands are named after the founders of the company, but Wilsdorf probably didn't want to use his German name due to the negative image of Germany back in those days, so he just made up names to see which one would stick. It would be like me setting up my own brand and calling it Al-Qaeda.
Or Joe Biden.
Well, you're never going to be able to visit America now. Wilsdorf also had other Abuche manufacturers make cheaper versions of these movements for his numerous brands, and most of those brands were dropped around 1945, with the exception of Tudor and of course Rolex, which is now one of the most famous brands in the whole galaxy. This on. when it's such an easy movement like this, I always try and spend a bit more time setting up the cameras in different positions to get better shots. But sometimes if I'm doing a chronograph or something complicated, then I tend not to, just due to time constraints. Do you remember when I asked you what the capital of the Republic of Ireland was?
Yeah.
The other day. What did you say?
I said dumpling.
Dumpling. Hey, what's all this noise? I'm missing on my shots. They think I'm stupid, I'm dumb. Sending this song to #1. Hey, why are you making so much noise?
I have to.
You have to.
Yeah, that's the whole point.
There is never a point of making any noise unless you're being attacked by a bear. You understand?
Yeah.
Then you make loads of noise. There aren't any posts on these things, just freestanding. Just dab a little bit on there. You can see the screw as well. Big shoulder on it. Put a little bit on the shoulder just there. Get this setting wheel on. So there's our injured hippo and there's the replacement. With this new camera setup, I'm not oiling from a mile away anymore. Now before I had this cleaned and I had this on the timing machine, the beat error was out quite a bit. I'm going to try and squeeze my oiler through there and just adjust that collet slightly. We'll try one way and then if it's made it worse, we'll go the other way. Can you see what I'm doing? You just move the camera around so that
The film goes in the way.
yeah. Okay, let's give that a try. You done it? So you can see with that beta, right? It's 9.9, so I twisted the collet the other way. So now I can go in the opposite direction and hopefully get that down. We've got it down to 2.5, so just a little bit more. Let's just oil this top jewel first before I burn any more midnight oil. There we go. Hope you saw that. There's some sort of residue on that, so we'll give it a nice clean before we oil it. So now we've got it down from 9 to 0.9, and I think I'm just going to give it one more try and then call it a day. So those of you who saw the JLC reversal video where I laser welded some deep scratches with the stainless steel wire, well, I wanted to do the same here to fill the engraving with some gold wire and then polish up the case back without losing any thickness on the already thin case back. So I purchased some 9-carat gold wire about a week before I attempted to do the case back. But a lot happened in between then as me and Trouble did some research on the engraving. You know this guy, yeah? This was presented to him in 1953. So this guy would have started this job after World War One. So he must have been in the war himself. He must have been in his mid-20s, early 30s. I assume if he worked there for 30 years, this was his final sort of settled job. What do you think? If he was 25 in 1923, when was he born?
1923.
Yes, so it says here,
30 years.
this is presented to A.B. McBride for loyal service at Mullard Limited, and he worked there from 1923 to 1953, so he worked there for 30 years. If he started in 1923, he must have been a young man, so he must have been like 25 or 30, so that means he was born in the 1800s.
So 18, so I'm taking a guess when he was born. 1885.
1895.
1895 he was born.
Probably. Can't find anything on him, but I know the company. I did research on the company. The company was founded in 1920, so it's only 3 years after the company was founded that he started working for them. So he's probably not alive, is he? Imagine he wore this watch and he's not alive anymore. They're a bit sad.
Yeah. Wait, so you didn't even get to wear it?
He wore it, but that's a nice straight flat surface. That's a little bit on the curved side. We'll just tidy that up for him whilst maintaining this sharp, crisp line. And we'll use a little mini mop just there. So Millard Limited was a British manufacturing company who started off making electrical components in the 1920s. So just imagine electrical components in the 1920s when hardly anything was electronic. So this company must have been cutting edge, like an Apple back in the day. And this chap, who had probably been through 2 wars, must have been a tech-savvy buffin for his days. The company later underwent some mergers with big companies like Philips Semiconductors in the 1970s, but the company no longer exists. Nor does the gentleman who this watch was gifted to. He may have passed it on to his progeny, who themselves may have left this earth by now, and the subsequent generation may have lost or forgotten the history and connection to this chap, as is often what happens after a few generations. My great-grandkids probably won't seek out my existence, but speaking with my own son and looking at his face whilst researching the history of this gentleman, I didn't have the heart to erase the history on this watch, in the hope that there is someone out there who still remembers A.B. McBride. There may be some other reason or extenuating circumstance why this watch was sold and not kept within the family. If the engraving was something like, "Happy birthday Liam 2023, love Candice, XXX, then I would have laser welded the heck out of it. But I just couldn't do with this one. So although this is sort of a banked bezel, if you look at it from this side, it is straight and flat instead of straight on, and I'm rolling it through my fingers so that it's always square with the mop. My mop has gone a little bit out of shape, but I'm just putting a fresh one, and then I'm rolling it at that same angle as well to keep the bezel flat against the mop at all times. So there you go, no fancy tools or anything required. Get in there, and as you can see, it's still very flat. And so after speaking to the owner, we came to an understanding, and I've decided to tidy the case up for him so it looks pleasing to wear. I have the gold wire, so maybe on another episode. If you want to see how laser welding a watch is done, then have a look at the reversal video, and that's a grail watch for many, so you'll enjoy it and hopefully learn a few tricks or two. And then as for this bit, we can use the big mop on this just to make that bit of history pop a little bit more, make it look nice and tidy. Not taking too much off, just a buff with some rouge and get rid of those years and years of fine swirls and marks. There's a slight little dent here, just there. We'll leave it at that. So our hand is gold, but this one, you can see it's magnetic. It's strange, isn't it? To have one hand gold and one steel. I'm not quite sure if these hands are gold or gold plated. I'm just going to try a small section on the underside to see if it gets all brassy on me. They do look a little bit rough. It'd be nice to give them a polish if they're gold. If they're not gold and they're just plated, don't want to be polishing them back to the brass. These ones as well look a bit rough. So I'll just give them a little clean first. I'll just give it a light rub with just a polishing cloth, gold polishing cloth. The hands are curved. How's that looking? There's nothing more agile than the human hands. So, a nice, slightly shiny alligator, and here you can see a different shade of shine. Alligator, or we can go for some crocodilius, which is shiny, shiny, shiny. We have a bit of lizard, which is the same level of shine as that one. Brown is off the table, otherwise we could have gone for a nice dark brown. Or we just go for something matte. Something period. These are all flat profile, slightly shiny, medium shine, and shiny, shiny, shiny. I think this one looks very period, so we could go for that one. And it's flat as well. Brown was definitely a no-no. So there you have it, friends. A watch that once belonged to a man who was born in the 1800s, who had witnessed 2 world wars and so much more. I wonder who he was and what he was like. He may have descendants, or his line may have ended. But we have left the history on this one in the hope that it may find its way home one day. Another generation may pass, and then the chances of that become even slimmer, and someone may just decide to melt it down or have it polished out. But that's life, I guess. There was once a great king who owned 1/3 of the world's riches. But before he died, he told his people that when you wrap my body in the plain white shroud, don't wrap my hands so people can see that I am going away empty-handed. We take nothing with us, but we can leave so much behind. Good deeds and actions that can help and benefit others for years and years to come after we are gone. So thank you all for chilling out with me on this one, and I hope you enjoyed my company. Hit all those buttons as it helps with the evil YouTube algorithm. And I look forward to reading all your comments. Look after yourselves, friends, and take care of each other. Peace, love, and blessings to you all. And if the Almighty wills, I'll see you on the next one. Ta-ra!